Welcome to my podcast, Vicky, and it's really an honor. And I'm very excited because I never know what my guest is going to share with me. And usually I just let my guests introduce themselves instead of me introduce them. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Victoria. I am an immigrated GP here in Auckland. I am sorry about my voice. I have a bit of a sore throat. That's the problem with the job. You get to see a lot of sick people and then you get sick. I am a French citizen, but also Mexican citizen because both my parents are from those countries. And I guess I'll tell you more about me in the next minutes and hour.
Cool. So when did you move to New Zealand?
I moved in December last year, 2025, after a long process to get a visa, to get a job, a sponsor job, of course. New Zealand has a very good program to look for GPs around the world. So I heard about certain programs, certain recruiting agencies that go overseas and try to recruit people. So that's how I learned about this, and that's how I am here.
Wow. And was New Zealand always kind of your dreams to come here, or it was truly by chance?
I guess it's a country that always promotes dreams and promotes wonder because it's far away from everything, because it's a place that nobody really knows about because it's often missed from certain maps. So it's, I guess, yes, it was a dream at some point. The first time I heard about New Zealand was during the rugby matches because my dad is a big fan, is still a big fan. So the first time I heard about New Zealand was with the famous haka and when they competed against France 20 years ago. And from that day on, I don't know why New Zealand kept on popping in my life. People that went there, matches, movies, books. When I started studying, I didn't have time to travel much, but I always told myself that I might visit one day. And I realized that they accepted and they invited doctors over. So that would have been an option. And here I am.
Wow, amazing. So are you enjoying your time in New Zealand so far?
Yes, it's the honeymoon period. Everything is new. Everything is pretty. The people are nice. But so far, yes, I'm really enjoying it. It's very difficult to get on with the system because, of course, it's a different language. It's a different way to insurances, the health system, the politics, the government, all those things are brand new and I have to get used to it. But it's part of the adult responsibilities. Huh? We have to know how to manage our money, how to manage ourselves. And fortunately, I find that the population here in New Zealand, especially here in Auckland, there are a lot of immigrants. So that really helps to find people to connect with, people that are far away from their homes, far away from their families, from their long-lasting friends. So I find that it's a good way to connect with people than in other countries that I've been in.
Have you been to New Zealand before moving?
Not at all.
So you're taking a really big steps, isn't it? Just to move across.
Yes, exactly across. Because I lived in Belgium before, so it's almost exactly across the world. I arrived with my 2 luggages, and let's see where this goes.
So you were in Belgium before you came to New Zealand.
Yes. It's a very tiny country compared to this one.
You hold 2 citizenships, isn't it? Mexican and also French, and then you live in Belgium.
Yes.
How long you live there?
I was there for the whole studies, so it was 10 years, more or less.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a really lovely country. I really appreciate the people. I appreciate the hospitality, and they're a very welcoming country. They have a lot of cultural issues because it's a mix of different types of cultures and religions and languages, but it's a really nice place to live in. Really, really nice. It's just rainy all the time. It's more rainy than here. I hear people complain about Auckland's rain. And for me, this is not winter in Belgium.
So you were in Belgium for 10 years. So you were doing your medical study.
Yes. 10 years of studying and in those 10 years, we work as interns for a few years as well.
Can you take me back to your childhood? By the way, how many languages you speak?
I speak French and Spanish and English.
It's amazing.
It's not bad. It helps me to get along with a lot of people. So that's really nice here.
But I think it helps as well as a GP, isn't it? So I don't know whether you have any patients who speak Spanish or French, but to them, that would be a big help.
I work mainly in South Auckland. So there are a few Spanish speakers, but it's mainly Pacifica, mainly Asian people. So I almost considered learning Te Reo Mari or Cantonese. I was like, that would have been really useful in that setting. but it's another journey.
Let's go back to your childhood. Tell me more about your childhood.
Ooh. So I was born in June 95 in a city in southern France called Montpellier,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful city. It was not my growing up place. It was my holiday place because I never really lived there. And because my parents worked overseas, we moved after a few months to Nigeria, where I grew up for 3 years and where I learned to walk, learned to eat, learned to swim. And after that, my sister was born and we moved to Kenya. And we spent a few years in Kenya. So it was mainly the life of immigrants, let's say, in a certain way, with the French community and Spanish-speaking community. And I find that life, it's a bit of a golden cage, especially in Africa, because we don't get to be with certain locals. It can be very difficult to exchange with certain locals. It can be very pleasing, of course, because as a child, it's a big garden, it's pets, it's the safaris, it's many beautiful things, but we don't get to experience the country as itself. It was more my parents that had that experience. And now that I am an adult and I compare a bit the relationship that they had with their immigration history and mine, it's very different. It was another time. They didn't have cell phones either. They were just starting with the computers, Skype, YouTube, whereas now I can just have a call with a friend who's on the other side of the world and just catch up. Whereas at that time it took longer to get some news or documents or clothes. So it's very interesting to compare.
What years you then moved to the next place?
I was 3 or 4 when I moved to Kenya, but then we moved to Belgium again for 3 years when I was 9, 11, 12, and then all the way to Madagascar for 4 years again. So it was a lot of going back and forth. And it was a big change all the time, of course, but it is interesting to see that there are people who to connect with this sort of lifestyle because we obviously met people in different countries that had to move to another country completely. So the network would just spread out and you would meet people that knew someone that they had met at a cafe in a certain place in Kabul, whereas they become best friends when they were in a hotel in, I don't know, in Singapore. So it's a life of networking, being random. You never really know who you're going to meet and who you're going to see, but you know at some point you'll meet them again.
So you really explore to a lot of world views from very young age. I mean, like, and different cultures, peoples, languages. But it must be hard.
Yes, it is hard, especially when you know that it's also culturally difficult.
Yeah.
You know, you're from two cultures and then you live in another culture. So it's what we call the third culture kids that don't really belong to one place, but they don't really belong to other places either.
That's right. Yeah.
So it can be difficult, yes.
Yeah. But do you enjoy it? I mean, you move a lot.
I think it's a little bit part of the family, let's say, habits, because my grandfather moved a lot, my dad moved a lot. So generation after generation, there's not really a place that we call home. We have places that we call the most where we have our habits. Of course, we have, for example, when we travel, we try and spot different places in the landscape, the mountain, for example, or the river, and we connect to those parts. Saying, yes, remember the tree in this place. Yes, I remember. And every time we try and remember our trips from that time. For example, we always say that our home is where we are, my parents and my sister and I, together at some point. Say this is our little home because we were the four of us traveling around. And that's where we feel the best, I guess, because we understand each other in our crazy habits.
So you're moving so far away from them. What do they say?
Of course, the parents are a bit worried about their kids leaving the nests, but they knew that I wanted to travel at some point as well. My sister actually traveled before me, so I'm not the first one in the family to leave. My youngest sister left home to go study abroad. And then she's the one that traveled for her job. So she's already lived in many other countries as well for a few months to a year. So she has more experience than me, but she's younger. So she's teaching me lots of things.
It sounds like your family also very close.
Yeah, we had to. It was just the four of us. You find the people that you live with. At some point, they're the ones who understand you the best. Of course, there's going to be conflict. Of course, there's going to be fights because we grow up in different environments. So we're used to certain things that are different. And We tend to question each other as well, saying, "Oh, you always like this. No, I've never like this." So there are always fights. It's family. That's how family works. But it's true that we always come back together, and it's our a little, I want to say, a Lucy, our hub. There are different types of families, and not all families is perfect.
Mm,
And family members can be people that have no blood relationship as well.
mm.
So finding your families in different places, that's also a goal, I think.
Do you have a favorite place that you've been to from your childhood or from the time when you're moving from places to places? Or there's one place that kind of, like you have the most fond memories of?
Ooh, that's a hard one. If I were to talk about the places that bring me more emotions, would be maybe the places that I've been more often. So it would be my grandparents' house in
Mm,
France, where I've
mm,
spent almost every Christmas, almost every summer, ever since I was born, I guess. So
mm,
it's the habits, it's the trees, it's the mountains around them. So I think that will be what brings me more nostalgia and more emotions, I
mm,
guess. We only saw them twice a year, which is not a
mm.
lot compared to certain families that live really
No,
close to each other.
that's right.
So yeah, I think that would be, it's a house that has a big garden with a cherry tree. And
Mm,
because my birthday was in June, that was a time when we went to visit them because the
mm,
cherry tree was, of course, full of fruits. And that was the
yeah.
time when we all shared together the fruits. We would climb the tree with my sister, try and grab the fruits at the top, make food afterwards with my grandmother. So those are very fond memories. So I
That
guess that
was,
environment is the one that brings me more emotions.
do you close with your grandparents?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Are they still alive or?
No, they passed away a few years ago.
uh, yeah, sorry
Still a
to
bit
hear that.
painful to talk about that.
Yeah. Uh,
It was during the COVID season, so it was really difficult for all of us, but it was
mm,
still painful to be far away from them.
yeah, exactly. And to be honest, regardless 10 or 15 years, you're always going to miss your loved one. It doesn't make it any less painful or
It's true what you're saying, and it's about remembering as well. I
mm,
always try and remember the things that they taught me, of course, the
mm,
things that I loved about them, the things that I hated about them, but it's part of the
mm,
relationships. And
mm,
it's true that every time I think about it, I get a bit sad, but then I get happy because I remember it at least. And I
mm,
know that they would have been happy as well in a certain
mm,
way that I
mm.
remember them.
Do you want to talk a little bit about them just to celebrate who they are? I have a tendency to
Oof.
talk about people that who leave a legacy in our life and shape
Hmm.
us, isn't it?
Oof.
Yeah.
It's gonna be wonderful, but it's gonna be okay. So my grandparents were both born in 1930, so they were quite old already when we were
Mm,
born, my sister and I, but that didn't
mm,
stop them. They would take us on holidays, they would take us on hikes, on to fish, to go to the sea, to go shell picking. That would not stop them to enjoy the time with us. And I guess that's what I remember as well about the home that they had, that we always were back and forth. And my grandfather had a huge garden, of course, I mentioned, and he would tend to it himself, grow lots of vegetables, go mushroom picking, go fruit picking in the forest, and then we would all eat together. My grandmother would make the meals. And they both had very different personalities. My grandfather
mm,
was the one that was the, let's say, the man of the house.
mm,
This is how it has to be. And my grandmother was more the really cool girl, cool lady that just followed, but she had her
mm.
own personality as well. We didn't want to mess up with either of them because it could be quite strict, both of them. And my grandfather was an engineer, so
Mm,
he had made lots of projects along a different river in France called
mm,
Rhône. So he had
mm,
built different dams along the river.
mm.
Well, him
Wow.
and his team, of course. And that explained why he was moving along all the time. He was never in one
Yes.
place.
Yeah.
So he had had a really full life. And when he
Wow.
was retired, he continued. He had friends all over Europe. They traveled a lot. They went back and forth. They came to visit us in every single country where we lived. So we had
Wow.
the chance that our grandparents would be wealthy enough to come and travel at a
Mm,
time where it could have been difficult for certain people. So that
mm,
was also the reason we were so close to them, because there would be no obstacles in being together
mm,
apart from
mm,
distance at some time. And
mm,
that every moment we spent together would be at home or outside, we would enjoy every moment of it.
mm. Wow.
So yes,
Sounds like you really have a wonderful fond memories with your grandparents, and
yes,
I can feel that they really adore both of you. I can see why you're missing them so much.
yes,
Yeah.
obviously. Those
Yeah.
are my grandparents on the French side, because unfortunately
Mm.
the grandparents on the Mexican side, they were both deceased when I was born.
Oh
So
yeah.
I never met them, but
Yeah.
I heard stories from my mom
Yeah.
that they were quite a pair as well.
What I feel most beautiful is that those memories are something very important to you and your family, especially how your grandparents show you what love is, what family means.
Uh,
And they showing you a lot of things that probably will always be with you. Yeah.
Definitely. Every time I go on a hike, I cannot stop from thinking of the habits that we had when we were kids. For example, how to pack my food, how to get ready, all those things my grandparents taught me. So it's difficult to go through life without their advice, of course.
Yeah. But I can also understand why this is so important. It's because every steps you take and everything you make is still echo their essence in your life. And so it's not so easy. But also on the other hand, it's such a beautiful way to memory and honor who they are really. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Definitely. It's good once in a while to think about them as well. And it could be with cries, it could be with laughs. It's good as well to let it come out at some point.
The reason why I always love talking to people about legacies because they are people who shape our life that we can't see until someone talk about. And I'm very keen to hear why you have decided to become a doctor. It's not an easy journey, to be honest.
That's a difficult one because as far as I remember, I've always wanted to be one.
Hey,
So my mom tells me, of course, I don't remember, but she tells me that ever since I was a kid, I wanted to cure people and help people. So I don't know, call it a elder daughter syndrome or whatever, but apparently it's something that's quite common in older daughters.
yeah, yeah, they like to take on more responsibility. Yeah,
Yes. So
it's
apparently
true.
I'm following the stereotype, but it's working fine, I hope. I've always wanted to be a doctor. I guess with time, it was more about curiosity. How does the body work? How does it respond to things? Why am I bleeding? Why am I feeling this? Of course, it's something that is difficult
Mm,
because it's a decision that you will decide it for 10 years of studying.
mm,
And then you will have to work through it with all the stress that it comes with, because we all know that it's not an easy profession. It's also about dealing with people.
mm,
And there was a point in my life where I thought I could not deal with people and I wanted to be a surgeon or a radiologist because I did not have to
mm,
deal with people with those specialties.
mm,
But
mm.
apparently I like people. So now I'm a GP.
What have been
Mm.
the biggest barrier that now you look back, you will give certain advice to people who wanted to be a doctor? Because I know like to be a doctor is the hardest professional, right? How you have to go and
Mm,
into the hospital working for long hours as well. I don't know
mm.
whether that is the case in Belgium or not.
We have to build the knowledge. So it's known that it's a difficult field to
Mm,
study,
mm,
but the resources throughout all the countries in the past 10 years for doctors, would it be hospital? Would it be supervision? Would it be training? They're
mm,
not doing well in no country. So there's a
mm,
problem in Spain, there's a problem in England, there's a problem here in New
mm.
Zealand because
Yeah,
there's no
yeah,
resources anymore.
yeah.
So that is something that we knew as well a few years ago, that we knew the resources would be sparse at some point,
Mm,
but that shouldn't be an obstacle to the
mm,
decision to do medicine. I think it's difficult to choose when you're 18, when you're 17. I would advise to do some observational
mm,
experiences. Try and
mm,
follow the local GP. Try and ask for the people around you what they think about it.
mm,
That would be something to maybe open your mind to certain things in the
mm,
field, because at the
mm,
end of the day, it's tiring. So it's dealing with the people, with the problems, with all the negativity that comes from our job, because we are
mm,
giving
mm,
bad news. We're always giving
mm,
bad news. Sometimes they're good
mm,
news. Your cholesterol is
mm,
good. Good job.
mm,
But most of the
mm.
time, it's going to be bad news. So how do you
True.
deal with people's misery? How do you deal with people's
Wow.
way to see disease? Because disease has a different perspective in different cultures. How is your
True.
perspective of disease seen by other people? What would be the
Yeah.
thing that they worry most about? Some people
Uh,
don't care if they have a cancer. They just want to see their family be healthy around them. So
mm,
that involves talking about, okay, what
mm,
is your priority? So it's also about opening the mind to other people's perspectives as well. It's
mm,
not only you have this disease, this is the cure. No, there's much more to this. It's how to embrace that relationship. And that's what I like
mm,
about being a GP, is that you get to sit down and talk about the things that worry people the most, try and
mm,
reassure them. or try to open their eyes. This is not going to be a possibility. We have to go this way and accept their decisions, because some people are very straight. Like this is the solution and that's all. And it's not always like that.
So it's not just about understanding diseases, but getting knowledge and experience so that you can share it with your patients and let them know what is the alternative. But on the other hand, you also need to manage expectations, managing how you deliver bad news, seeing family grief. And in the end of the day, you also a human being. That's what people forget. All the professional, regardless what it is, you guys also a human being. It doesn't mean it makes any easier, because the impact that you have for them, for their family, can be hard as well.
Some days can be difficult. We always talk about resilience, in certain jobs, saying, okay, we have to get tough. But some people manage, but some people don't. So it depends a little bit on how you work. If you know you're very empathetic, for example, for yourself, how do you know what are the things that help you to get through a difficult time? How often do you have to do it per day? Do you have to allow yourself a break between patients? It's all about knowing yourself. So that goes back to how to decide on a profession, how to decide to be a doctor, because it all comes back to how do you know yourself well enough, or do you want to just try and see how it goes?
You must be very proud of yourself, so I have to say, because it doesn't sound like an easy journey. It sounds like a long journey. And
it is a long journey. I strongly believe certain years of those studyings were useless because there were subjects that were nowhere near medical stuff. I don't know if it's a university decision to get rid of certain students, because unfortunately that does happen. Still happens in many university degrees, the programs. But at the same time, it builds your strength in a certain time, in a certain way, saying, okay, I can get to this, I can get to this. But that can be something that can be problematic in the long term, because you always want to get there and get the grades. And that's how you get imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't belong somewhere as well. So fortunately, the mental health of the healthcare professionals has been a big subject in the last years. So we get that information. We know where to get help. At least some of us do. And it's true that it's a time of my life while I was studying that I'm very proud of, because I managed to pass every year. Except the first year was a disaster, but after that, it went more or less smoothly. I didn't have real holidays for a few years because I had to study all the time for exams.
oh my God.
So that's why now I think mental health and the time for yourself as a GP, as a nurse, as a healthcare technician, as a lawyer, as a worker, it's important. I know that the breaks are important for everyone.
Absolutely. Because our body and mind can only take so much, isn't it? And then we'll come to a point where it just can't do it anymore. What is the experience like a medical student and start working in a hospital? There must be quite a big transition.
It is, well, I don't know about New Zealand. Of course, I haven't had the occasion to talk a bit that much about with my colleagues. But in Belgium, it is a transition that they wish was smooth, because they slowly introduce us in the hospitals by having a month of observational internship, and then you have another month of practical internship. But it all depends on where you end. Depends where you're accepted, because some interns, some residents will give you a bit of work to do. So they will be motivating you, saying, oh yes, let's study a bit more about this and write a small summary of this disease. We'll see together. We'll go and see Mr. John Doe over there, and we'll talk to him together, and you can ask the questions that you want. And some other residents will not take you anywhere and just ask you to sit down and be quiet.
Okay.
So it really depends where you end up. It depends who you end up with, of course.
Yeah.
Depends how you're doing in your life. I know a lot of friends that were going through grief because they had lost a grandfather, a mother. There was a diagnosis of cancer in their family. And those are obstacles that we all have in our lives as well. But of course, we are expected to go through them as if nothing, especially when you're studying and when you're working. So it was, for certain of my friends, very difficult, especially in the hospital, when you're expected to do a certain number of hours, see a certain number of patients, save everyone. Especially the concept of saving everyone is given to the doctor, whereas we know that sometimes we just cannot. So I know that it's difficult from sitting down at your desk and reading about diseases and having a person that has literally their life in your hands. So that's difficult. And I'm talking about my friends that are in the hospital where they have to deal with really acute situations.
Oh.
As a GP, we have the chance, in a way,
Mm,
to not have to deal with certain
mm,
acute life and death
mm,
situations. We have to know when to send someone to those specialists.
mm,
But in the hospital, it's more stressful, I think.
mm,
That's why there's so much burnout. That's why there's so much exhaustion among the healthcare workers
mm,
at all
mm.
levels, not only the doctors.
No, yeah, absolutely. I don't know about Belgian system, but even seeing the ED here in New Zealand, like the level of care and compassion, what you say is so complicated. And sometimes look at
Mm,
all the individuals, like they're all human beings as well,
mm,
and take on a huge responsibility of helping another human. And they all have a story, like what you say. Even some of medical students might have issues that happening in their life. They still have to carry on and take care of someone else and making sure that put other people first. It's not something that textbook can
mm.
teach you.
The problem is that the universities, the schools, in a certain way, they make you think that you feel guilty when you don't attend work or don't attend school or don't attend the workshops because they grade you on this.
Mm,
So when you have
mm,
a family situation, when you have a personal situation, you tend to put it aside and you
mm,
just focus on I have to get through. So that's
mm,
something I noticed on myself, that I would just put aside things that were important for me
mm,
because I
mm.
had to go through.
I hear you because often study medical professional, it sounds like a privilege. It's only like a top few percent of people can be there, even though you have earned it. But also, on the other hand, just reminded how privileged you are to be in this kind of position. So it's your
Mm,
responsibility and ingrained into your daily practices, even
mm,
including you sacrifice your life for other people, which is unhelpful in any sense because you have a life too, isn't it? But if you're not in full tank, you can't help other people. It's much better if you are in full tank and you can be more effective. I have seen other professionals, not doctors, like people just
mm.
drain. You can see there's nothing left in their tank. As you say, it's only just started having more acknowledgement about that in medical field, you reckon?
There's not a lot of understanding from certain
Mm,
generations.
mm,
We can see that
mm,
there's a very distinct way of thinking in younger and older generations. Would they be
mm,
healthcare professionals or any sort of professionals?
mm,
Because for some people, a doctor has to be always available. And which the perfect a doctor would be available 100% of the time, but then it's a machine. It's not a doctor
yeah,
anymore. But that's how they did in the past as well. The doctors 40, 50 years ago, at least in Belgium, I don't know about here,
yeah,
they were on call all of the time and they had very few patients. So they would be okay waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning, going to visit that patient, coming back to sleep with the family.
mm,
So that was a habit a few decades ago. That's why
mm,
people now, especially people that lived through that time, still want the things to work that way. But now the population,
uh,
it's too much. It's too much.
yeah,
Now before it would be a few hundred citizens for
yes,
one doctor. Now it's thousands.
yeah,
So it's impossible to be 100% present for everyone. And
mm,
that's why they have on-call duties that have been
mm,
put throughout the years. And for example, I used to work in a region in Belgium where we would be on call one evening in a fortnight. So there was a
mm,
group of doctors working together. And so that
mm,
one doctor would not be on call every single time. They would just separate the amount of hours
mm,
throughout themselves, and it
mm,
would allow that there was a continuous medical care and it
mm,
would not be a strain on one doctor only.
yeah.
It would be a team.
Then, when you decided to come to New Zealand, was it a long process? Do you have to go through any further examinations, or it's more about paperwork and making sure that then you can come to New Zealand?
I have the chance of having a Belgian diploma, which is part of the countries that are exempt from doing the NZ medical exam. So
Mm,
myself, I didn't have to do any exams regarding medical knowledge. I could just
mm,
come with my
mm,
diploma and I would
mm,
be knowledgeable.
mm,
But for example, for France, they have to go through the NZ regs, even though Belgium and France have the same curriculum. It's very interesting because France has a curriculum for studying that is much harder than Belgium because they have years of internship, of course. They
yeah.
have a very difficult exam. That's a national exam where they have a rank, and depending on the rank, they can get the specialty that they want.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you're the top of the exam, you can
Ah,
decide where you work, with who, which specialty. So it's something that's very hard. Plus, they have to do a thesis at the end of
ah,
their studying.
Yeah.
That's much more specific than the ones we have in Belgium.
So it means that you can come straight away and practice as a medical professional. And do you find it easier or anything different in New Zealand and Belgium? So
The health system itself is completely different.
yeah.
It's still difficult to this point to adapt to everything because we had in Belgium, there's a little bit of an ACC. So in your taxes, there's an amount that goes to public health, but there are no extra insurances. So that amount is maybe a bit larger, but it's something that will be for everything, not only accidents.
Yeah.
So that's one main part here that I have to really take care of who has insurance, who doesn't have insurance, where can we send them, public, private. I'm still getting the hang of it. It's complicated, but it's good that I have colleagues with me that help me through it and that I can just call them and see if they can explain things to me.
Of course, there's a general public system, but there's some people also have private insurance where they can get quicker support, and there's ACC that is different, which can be very confusing. I mean, like, to be honest, I've been here 20 something years. I still don't know how it works. Tell me now your life in New Zealand. How has it been?
So when I got here, I did not have a car, so I could not explore all the wonders that New Zealand tends to promote to people around. So I had to deal with the CBD and a little bit of the neighborhoods around it. So I walked a lot in those days. And it was really nice because it was December, it was sunny. I got to go to the beach. I got to just explore the reserves around Auckland. And I realized it's such a huge city. I don't think I've seen another city that's so extended and that has such a bad public transport system because it's terrible and you cannot get somewhere unless you change buses 3 times. It's so awful.
Yeah.
And coming from Europe with the buses and metros, not always on time, but at least we know how to get somewhere. That was a big part of the cultural shock.
Yeah, I know. I hate public transport in New Zealand. That's why I drive. I don't use public transport.
And that's another problem. Everyone has a car. So it's very difficult to be eco-friendly in this country because everyone has a car.
It is. Yeah. So now having
my eco-anxiety is going up. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm using the car every single day.
To be honest, New Zealand didn't have the best public transport system.
I've had my car for a few months now, so it's good. I'm used to it. What I really like here is that you can see the stars from everywhere at nighttime. And that's something that always amazes me because it had been a while since I hadn't seen stars from a city. Because in Belgium, clouds plus the lights from the houses. And here I can just look up and I'm like, oh, Scorpio. It's like, oh, Orion. I had forgotten about this one. And for me, those are souvenirs from when I was in Madagascar because it's the same night sky. So I recognize constellation. I'm like, hey, I know that the Southern Cross. Oh, it's like, this is nice.
Oh, so amazing.
So that's something I got to rediscover here. That was really cool.
What is the most surprise to you after you are in New Zealand that you didn't expect?
I guess it's a little bit of everything in everything, if that makes sense. That I expected the food to be less international. I expected it to be much more English. But no, there's everything in this country, and that's amazing.
All right.
That's really cool to have foods that look authentic from so many different parts of the world. I had expected it to be more, more English. So less spices.
Yeah.
If I want to be polite.
Yeah. You can literally find any food in Auckland that you're looking for.
I really like my French and Mexican food heritage. So before coming here, I Googled. I was like, where can I buy tortillas? Where can I buy this? I was like, okay.
Yeah. Where do you go to do your shopping then?
For Mexican food, there's a really nice shop that's called Ay Caramba. There's one in Tacanini in the south, but there's also one, I think, Epsom for the French food. Fortunately, it doesn't need very specific wheat flours or very specific ingredients. But I do find it difficult to find my basic quiche base.
Because it's different, the one that they use in French instead of in New Zealand. What's the difference?
I don't know. Because it's weird because it's the same paste as the ones that you use for sausage roll, the one that you use for pies. But it's different. It has a different taste. It has maybe more butter. It has less layers. I don't know. It's just different.
Of course, you guys are famous for bread. And I mean, that must be a very special way of making it. Is there anything that do you want to share that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
I'm very grateful for this country because very privileged to be here, to be able with my profession to do my actual profession, because I know that a lot of immigrants that have their diplomas, that have their specificities, cannot just come into a new country and work their own way like they were prepared to through the studies. Sometimes they follow their hobbies. Sometimes they manage to go through different changes as well in their life and their decisions. So it is quite humbling to see these other people that are able to go through it. And that's why I feel even more privileged as well, feeling, okay, I don't have to take this for granted. I have to really do my best as well. And as you mentioned as well a little bit earlier, that it's also a bit of pride, saying, okay, I've come all this way. It's not too bad what I've done. Let's try and do it well.
Usually I ask all my guests these questions. If you could go back to a time to talk to your younger self, what would you say to her?
Ooh, that's a question that I often ask myself, because when you're 30, you have so much confidence compared to when you're 20, when you're 25. Even today, I'm much more confident than last year. So maybe going back to my 10-year-old self and say, talk, just talk, because I was a tomb when I was a young child. I did not speak. I was shy. I didn't want to go to the front. So I think it would be just go. You can do it. Nothing bad's going to happen.
Wow.
Just go and talk.
Yeah. Wow. It doesn't come across as someone who's shy. So yeah.
That's recent.
Thank you so much, Vicky. I really appreciate your time. I'm so sorry that you're feeling unwell and you still come and
I
talk
am
to me.
sorry. I hope my voice would go through the podcast. It did until the very end.
It's no problem at all. Like what I say, they will just cut it out. The silent part, I don't even have to do anything. That's the
Perfect.
amazing. Yeah, I know, right? With the AI.
Great. I have that with my consultations now as well. It's really, really nice because you could just sit there and talk. And it's really nice because it just types everything for you.
Oh, so you don't have to type a note after that, isn't it?
I don't need to take notes, which is so much better because we only have 15 minutes and it's so difficult.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah.
It is really cool.
Yeah. It's really good to know when AI is used in a right manner that really reduce the workload for GP.
But the AI is something else in addition, because I have lots of patients that come in with their ChatGPT questions and answers. Weirdly, I really like that because I get to sit down with them and explain how it works. And that's really actually quite interesting because they see, oh, but I thought this was this. That's what Google said. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes Google is right. And the opposite happens. Of course, really bad advice can be given by ChatGPT and Google. So if I had one thing to tell people, it's don't follow the advice on the internet. Please come and ask us. Especially if it's injecting, especially if it's eating something, especially if there's something that gets into your body.
Because they can't do a full diagnosis, isn't it? They can only based on what information you put in. So sometimes not even accurate.
As professionals, we have special AIs databases that help us with the database from different journals and researchers. So we also do it on our side. So we cannot put the blame on patients from doing it on their side because we're also doing it. We all use AI now. But it's about selecting, it's about being objective possible, and always have let's say, not take it for granted. Don't believe it at first. Do the research. If there's something that does look like it's possible, we need another research next to it. We cannot trust what AI says most of the time.
Thank you so much, Vicky, and I really appreciate your time.